So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! The Detroit Lions will be drafting a cornerback with their first selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. Based off of Brad Holmes' history, based off of the roster construction, based off of the talent available, as well as the visits and the hints that Brad Holmes has been dropping all offseason, the Lions are going to draft a cornerback, and it is going to be very, very high. But I will not say it is going to be at the 29th overall pick because honestly, I think there's a chance that the Lions even trade up for the top cornerback in this class or potentially trade out of the first round and get a cornerback then. But whether that be a trade up, whether that be a trade down, or whether it be a selection right on the 29th overall pick, the Lions will be drafting a cornerback first. And today we're going to talk about why. So starting off, we're going to take a look at the visits and the offseason that the Lions have had this year as far as interviewing and as far as meeting with defensive backs. Now, the Detroit Lions have already had 5 different top 30 visits with cornerbacks this season. They've had 7 different meetings, including meetings at the Combine, Pro Day, as well as top 30 visits included. They've had 4 different defensive backs at their local Pro Day yesterday, and they have interviewed some of the best cornerbacks in this class. And when you look at the rest of the players that they've interviewed so far, most of them are second-round guys. Most of them are third-round guys. Some of them are day 3 guys. Very, very few of them are easy, guaranteed round 1 picks. And all of them that have been those round 1 picks have all been at the cornerback position. Now, taking a look at some of the other big guys that they've interviewed so far, they've interviewed both of the Bama cornerbacks, as both Kool-Aid McKinstry and Teron Arnold have both been at Allen Park within the last week on their top 30 visit. Kool-Aid, I believe, was there last week, and Teron Arnold is actually there today, posted on Instagram a video or a picture of Jameson Williams' locker. He is officially with the Detroit Lions pretty much as this video is being made. So they have interviewed both of the Bama cornerbacks, both of whom will likely be first-round picks. Teron Arnold probably a top 15 pick, and Kool-Aid McKinstry well within that top 32 as well. Another top cornerback that they interviewed at the Combine was Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo, the big, physical, fast, freaky athletic Senior Bowl standout. And he is a player that, again, will probably be gone before the 29th overall pick, but you don't interview these guys unless you at least have a suspicion or a thought that you could trade up into a range to acquire one of the top cornerbacks in this draft class. A couple other cornerbacks the Lions have been looking at on top 30 visits. You have Quantez Sitgers from the CFL. You have Nehemiah Pritchard from Auburn, as well as Andrew Phillips from Kentucky. And these are guys that I think are going to be late day 3 guys if they get drafted at all. But again, that is 6 different cornerbacks already that the Detroit Lions have met with, 5 of which have been top 30 visits and 1 of which was a Combine invite. And that doesn't even start to mention, that doesn't even begin to tell you about the players that were at the Detroit Lions local Combine, of which they had 4 cornerbacks and several other DBs as well. Those DBs include Kalen Grevin from Kansas. They have Chris McDonald from Toledo. They have Josh DeBerry from Texas A&M, as well as Mike Sanderstill from Michigan. They've interviewed safeties as well, not necessarily cornerbacks, but Jordan Anderson as well as Reggie Pearson were both at the Lions Pro Day as well. So they've been doing their homework on the secondary, and they have looked at more secondary members. They have looked at more cornerbacks this offseason than any other position in the draft. Usually the Detroit Lions, usually Brad Holmes is very spread out. Usually he's very good about getting different positions, seeing a variety of guys. But it's pretty clear this offseason that Brad Holmes wants a cornerback. Taking a look at the cornerback room this year, looking at how it's been constructed throughout the offseason so far, the cornerback room I actually think looks pretty good, with Carlton Davis being your cornerback 1 at the moment, Emmanuel Moseley, when healthy, being your boundary cornerback 2, with Amik Robertson being your cornerback 3, Kendall Vilder, a starter from last year, being your cornerback 4, with undrafted free agent sophomore Stephen Gilmore at the 5th cornerback, with Khalil Dorsey as your cornerback 6. Now, last season, you had Kendall Vildor and Khalil Dorsey taking starting snaps in the playoffs, in late season competitions, in positions where they needed to get the higher seed. They needed to clinch a playoff spot. They needed to clinch the division, and they were relying on Khalil Dorsey and Kendall Vilder in those situations, which obviously isn't ideal, and yet still they made it to the NFC Championship game. This season, they bring in Carlton Davis, who will be the starting number 1 boundary cornerback. You look at Emmanuel Moseley, a player that was not healthy last year, unfortunately, tore his ACL for the 2nd year in a row. But when he is healthy and when he is on the field, he is a really, really big, strong, physical cornerback. And I think if both of them can start on the outside, Davis and Moseley, the secondary will look significantly better this year when, with the top rush defense that they already have, passing the ball becomes significantly more difficult, and you will see an incredible jump for the Detroit Lions defense statistically. Amik Robertson, I think, is a really underrated cornerback in the NFL. He is only 5'9". He is severely undersized, but he is very scrappy. He fights for the football. He tackles really well. He hits a lot bigger than 5'9", and he is a really strong cornerback. However, I will fully admit that this cornerback room isn't the best room in the NFL. I think it's going to be tough for you to rely on Emmanuel Moseley to be healthy after coming off back-to-back season-ending injuries, right? Carlton Davis averages about 13 games a year, meaning he's probably going to miss a little bit of time. Amik Robertson has not been a full-time starter in the NFL for a very long time. So with 1 to 2 injuries in the secondary, you're all of a sudden back to Amik Robertson and Kendall Vilder being your cornerbacks 1 and 2. And although I think that Kendall Vilder and Amik Robertson are very good depth pieces, I don't necessarily want them starting on the boundary as the 2 starting corner. So there is very certainly a spot for a starting cornerback in this roster, and especially after the departure of Cameron Sutton this offseason, the cornerback room has become a bigger and bigger need. And ever since Cam Sutton was released by the Detroit Lions, they really haven't addressed the cornerback position at all. Right? They did sign Kendall Vilder back and they re-signed him, but I do believe that was a move that was going to happen regardless of the Cam Sutton situation, meaning the Lions need a cornerback, right? The Lions need somebody that can play the boundary cornerback position. And sitting at pick 29, they're going to have their pick of the litter. Teron Arnold and Kenyon Mitchell are going to be players that they likely will need to trade up for. But with both of them being interviewed and both of them being met with from the Detroit Lions side, there is a good chance that the Lions have their eyes on these kids. And with the right value, there's a chance that the Lions go up to, say, 12, 13, and they go get Teron Arnold, they go get Quinyon Mitchell. But even if they stick at 29, there's a good chance that Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be there. There's a good chance that Kamari Lassiter is going to be there. There is almost a guarantee that TJ Tampa is going to be there with the 29th overall pick, the cornerback from Iowa State. You could potentially throw in a guy like Nate Wiggins to start on the boundary for you. There are 4, 5, 6 potential first-round cornerbacks in this draft class, and one of them will be available at the 29th overall pick, if not a number of potential first-round cornerbacks. I think Teron Arnold would be excellent on the outside. I think Quinyon Mitchell would be really good on the outside. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry would be phenomenal for this defense. I think Kamari Lassiter fits this defense perfectly. TJ Tampa, I think, is a good fit as well with being a big press man corner. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if cornerback was addressed twice in this draft class. However, I feel very confident in saying that cornerback will be the first pick in the Detroit Lions 2024 draft class. It is by far, in my opinion, the biggest position of need right now for the Detroit Lions. It is one of the few positions that would have an instant and immediate starting upgrade over what is currently available at the position. And quite honestly, I think with all of the offensive talent going off the board, I think with all of the quarterbacks, all of the wide receivers, all of the tackles, with Brock Bowers, with all of the top offensive talent in this class, the defensive talent is going to be pushed to the back end of the draft. We might not see a defensive player drafted until 16, 15 at the earliest, potentially. I think you're not going to see one at the very least until the Bears at 9. And even then, they're likely to go with an offensive player, either a wide receiver or a tackle. The Jets aren't going to take an offensive player. Then you're at the 12th overall pick. So at best, you're talking about the first and the best defensive player off the board at 12. And I think even then, you still have several wide receivers, several offensive tackles, potentially a fifth quarterback, and several other offensive linemen. So cornerback's going to be pushed down. The value is going to be with the cornerback. And I think the value is exactly what Brad Holmes will be looking at. We know that he loves BPA. We know that he loves the best player available. And I do truly believe that at the 29th overall pick, the best player available will be a cornerback, and it will be the first pick of the Detroit Lions 2024 draft. So with all of that being said, that is my pitch for the Detroit Lions to take a cornerback. That's why I believe it will be the first round pick for the Lions this season. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about the draft, what player you'd want to see at 29, whether you agree that it will be a cornerback or whether you disagree and think it will be something else. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think about it. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.